Thank you for joining this talk. This talk is about Verite, which is an open standard on decentralized ID and issuance. We're very excited to show the first end-to-end implementation of this. We can get started now?
Yeah.
So quick introductions. Myself, I'm Praful, the product manager of Verite. I'm joined by Tao, who's the engineering leader of Verite. And excitingly, we have our early access partner, TrueFi, who are a product of ArcBlock, being represented by Ben. So let's quickly go over the agenda. We'll start off by talking about identity in the DeFi space, problems that DeFi builders face today when working with identity, the Circle Verite issuer, and the first implementation of the end-to-end experience and how that solves some of the problems that DeFi builders face. And then finally, we'll get Ben to talk about his experience with the standard, his team's experience onboarding onto the standard, and we'll have Tao run the demo. Awesome. All right, so identity in the DeFi world. Why do we need to know about a wallet's owner's or controller's identity when building financial products in the DeFi space? Well, first, we want to make sure that no sanctioned individual or politically exposed person is entering and using our product. We want to be proactive about mitigating financial crime by monitoring activities between identities in our product. And also, we want to tap into traditional attributes like accreditation so that we can enable use cases like under-collateralized loans. So let's take a look at how DeFi builders and protocols, if you go to the next slide, build and implement identity checks today. So we have our partner TrueFi. Ben will tell you a lot more about them in a second, but at a high level, they are a lending and borrowing protocol catered towards institutions. Their customers need access to clean pools where they know the counterparty has gone through the same vetting as them and they're not exposed to any crime, potential crimes, right? And as they're onboarding, they have to submit PII, like personal information, for all of their beneficiaries in their companies because they're catered towards institutions, so there's multiple people that they have to vet. And then on the other side, you have TrueFi, who have implemented the KYB or Know Your Business guidelines at the companies, and they have also ensured that there's operational compliance here, right? So working with the dev team to make sure that they have the right schema, the right processes, the right tools to actually do KYC and AML, for example. On the other side, you have developers who are not only working on the traditional front-end, back-end, and data analytics stack, but also the smart contract layer now. And they have to now work with services that hold PII. They have to implement the KYC tooling and AML tooling that the compliance officer has requested. And they're often slowed down by needing to implement this whole software process from scratch, right? They start by requirements from the business side all the way to implementation, as there's no reusable schemas, standards, or processes out there. On top of that, they also have to manage the PII infrastructure because they're handling PII, so they have to be compliant by regulations such as GDPR. And as you can see, this effort is repeated per dApp, right? As you, the user, try to access Circle, then you go trying to access TrueFi and another dApp protocol, you will have to submit the same list of PIIs, same list of beneficiaries, personal information, and you have to be comfortable with each app holding that PII. On the other end, you have the protocols that are paying the cost of implementing these processes from scratch, and they're literally doing the same kind of checks, holding the PII, but in silos. So the problem here, if you go to the next slide, is with the credentials themselves. They are not privacy preserving, meaning if I wanted to go and interact with one dApp, another dApp, and a third dApp, I would have to share the same PII and be comfortable with that dApp holding my PII. And it's expensive for the dApp to be built, to issue these credentials, to implement the KYB process, because there is no reusable process out there today, which comes with processes, schemas, and orchestrations. So what if, and then the other point here is it says that it's constrained to one service. I like to say that they're not portable, meaning you can't take that attestation from one business and say it's good in another business. You have to basically go through the whole KYB process of that second business again. What if you click, now what if these credentials were standardized, maintained by an open consortium where companies, dApps, chain analysis tools could come together and just reuse the schemas and processes? What if they were portable and interoperable with other dApps? What if they were privacy preserving, where I could attest to generic facts like KYB attestation, accreditation, without revealing my personal information? And that is what the Verite credentials are. So the Verite standard is an open standard for decentralized ID issuance and verification. With a Verite credential, a customer can take their attestation from one dApp and quickly access another dApp. Like you can see in this graphic, a customer, fully KYB'd customer on Circle can claim Verite credentials and get immediate access to TrueFi and other dApps that enable Verite. So let's take a look at how this actually works a little bit behind the scenes. So what we have here is Center, the organization who has laid out this standard. So in the standard, we see the three main players here that are contributing to the ecosystem are issuers of identities, wallets that allow companies and people to access dApps, verifiers that actually make these lightweight checks so that any dApp can check the status of KYB, check the status of accreditation in a very lightweight way that doesn't affect their end user experience. And what you see here is basically Circle, us standing up the first issuer, that's on the left, and the verifier as well. And we have partnered with MetaMask Institutional to provide the first wallet for Verite that can actually take these Verite credentials and help users access dApps. First dApp, excitingly, like TrueFi. So, and before talking a little bit more about TrueFi, we wanted to talk a little more about the issuer itself and how we issue KYB. Why this is important is because this actually gets into a little bit of the motivations for why we're so excited about creating the standard and growing the standard. Go to the next slide. So yeah, when a Circle customer signs in, we ask them to provide that full list of PII. We're dealing with institutions, so it's multiple beneficiaries usually, their legal entity info, their purpose of their account, the nature of their business. Based on all of this, we triage and risk profile these customers. So if they're high-risk customers, we immediately put them on an enhanced due diligence pipeline where we request more information. There are certain conditions that our compliance team has established that trigger periodic reviews on all accounts. Parallelly, we have live monitoring on each customer where we're screening them for sanctions, we're monitoring their blockchain transactions, and we're proactively reporting any suspicious activities to any relevant authorities, right? Only after all of this is done, of all of these compliance checks have passed, can a customer get these Verite credentials. And if any of these checks fail, we revoke those credentials. And why? And if you look at this process, right, it will give you the fact that we have a very, very high standard of KYB vetting. And we believe that once we have done this, our customers would like to access other apps, right, that have, like TrueFi, that have the same level of high standard. And this is our primary motivation into making the standard right here and being proactive in growing the standard with Center. So if you go to the next slide, we really feel like this rigor that we just showed you in this previous slide, we would like to unify this and open it in the ecosystem so that we can totally increase the speed and acceleration of business on both sides of the market, right? The purchaser and the business. So the call to action here is really for the community, for all of us here. Issuers, bring your unique attestations to the network, right? Avoid doing redundant checks. When I say redundant, I mean checks that a similarly staffed, similarly philosophy compliance team that is doing. Avoid doing them again, right? And just leverage the checks that have already been done. For dApps, I hope the value prop is pretty clear. You know, it's portable credentials, so you're able to onboard customers immediately. And you know, the API here that we have, the cloud API is free, and it's very low cost to maintain from the user's perspective, from the dApp's perspective. For wallets, we really want to empower you to provide a chain-agnostic and interoperable UI to pioneer the safer experience for customers to access these permissions pools, these permission swaps. And then help them feel safe as they are storing these VC credentials and take to other apps without containing any PII. With verifiers, what we have right now is a cloud API. We don't have anything on-premise. There's other channels of verification such as on-chain, non-compute ZK snarks. So we are really looking forward to partnering with you to bringing other channels of verification into the network. So with this, I'll stop here. This is just a general overview. And now I'm going to pass the mic on to Ben, who's going to tell us a little more about his experience and his team's experience with Verite.
Great, thank you. So I'm Ben. I'm the director of product at Archblock. We are the creators of TrueFi, a DeFi lending protocol that allows anyone who wants to raise, manage, and deploy assets on-chain to do so in an easy, compliant way. When we were looking at different opportunities to partner with various decentralized identity protocols, options like this, verifiable credentials, we looked at the market. There are several people who are solving this in different ways, whether that is an NFT, whether that is a VC like the Verite team. And we love the way that Verite is solving this problem by doing this in a wallet, doing it in a way that is easy, fast. There is a no gas fee versus if you were to ask for a user to mint an NFT to represent their identity. And so we appreciate that ability to do so. Also, the team has been an amazing partner for us technically, being a launch partner and design partner for the protocol, or the standard here. So in terms of how this works for us, because we are allowing different people with credit perspective to raise funds and portfolios on chain, it's important for them to be able to have a compliant process. Part of our offering as a platform for raising capital is that we allow for the compliant process. We have our own process of doing KYC and KYB, but looking for a more seamless way to do this and increasing the amount of people we can serve easily as part of our offering as a platform, Verite was an obvious choice for us. And as part of that, it was important that we could also support different levels of investor qualification. So for different dApps, maybe different. For us as an investment dApp, having the ability for someone to say, I want only KYB'd investors, only KYB'd investors who are accredited. I think for us, looking further and further along, like what are different investor qualifications that are important. So those are all things that we considered when looking at different opportunities and ultimately choosing Verite as a fantastic partner for us here. So I think that's a bit of how we're using it and why we chose to work with Verite. If there are any questions, feel free to come ask after.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. I guess at this point, we can go towards the demo now that you guys have a better understanding of what the TrueFi product is. And while Tao pulls it up, I can tell you what he's going to show us is basically we're going to go to Circle to a KYB'd account. We're going to claim Verite credentials, save them into our MetaMask institutional wallet, and then we're going to try getting access to a permission pool on TrueFi. Take it away, Tao.
Okay. So, can you hear me? Okay, great. So, welcome to the demo. So my friend Ben told me TrueFi offers 10%, almost 10% of API. So I have my wallet. I want to do DeFi transaction with TrueFi. So I install my wallet here. You see, This is MetaMask. So I go to TrueFi's website, want to do DeFi. Then I found, okay, the land button is great. I cannot do it because they require verify your identity. So I thought, okay, so I do the verify my identity. They provide a couple options. The native option, verify your identity, you have go through the formal KYB or KYC process. That takes a long time, usually not be done instantly, maybe takes days, hours. And they also provide third-party options. This is our option, Verite, offered by Circle. So if I, if I look at my wallet here, I have a section called verified credential. This is the location we store our Verite credential into here. Now, if you look at it, I click it, there is one, let's say the demo, I can delete this one first. So I don't have identity in my wallet now. If I do the verify my identity, I press the Verite button, it will show request failed because you don't have identity in your wallet. How do I get the identity? Now, because as the platform mentioned, I already go through Circle. I register in Circle's account. I have the account. I go through the KYB, KYC process a long time ago. They have all my information. Now I log into my account. I go to Verite, this tab. I can request my credential immediately. So I request it because I already linked to my MetaMask wallet. It will pop up my wallet, say whether you approve this one or not. I approve it. Now, if I click MetaMask wallet, go to the same place, verified credential place. I have a credential here. Remember, I deleted this one. I request one. I got it instantly. Now let me go back to TrueFi website. I try to do the identity verification. I click this button again. I choose the Verite, this option. Now it recognizes I have a credential in my wallet. So it pop up MetaMask wallet here. I choose one, then I said approve. Boom, you have your identity verified by Verite. Now the land button is highlighted. You can start to do DeFi transaction in TrueFi's website. So
Thank you. That's awesome.
So I put like 10 USDC there. I click their term agreement. I agree with the term agreement. Next step, and land. It will pop up the MetaMask wallet again to ask me to confirm. So I confirm it, start to do the transaction. The DeFi transaction takes a little bit longer, so I don't have to wait because we already demoed the Verite flow, so it allows us to engage in the transaction already. So, it's finished.
Awesome.
Yeah. Great.
So just to put that in perspective, right, if we didn't have this would be days, sometimes weeks of onboarding versus this was onboarding in 2-3 minutes,
like
I would say.
1 minute.
Yeah. So yeah,
So?
Awesome. So we just saw Tao cover the demo, and what we just saw was claiming the Verite credentials from a Circle account. And he took them, he saved them into the MetaMask wallet. I'm not sure if you saw the prompt clearly, but there was an approve button right there. And then we got access to the TrueFi permission pool right after that, taking that VC with us. All right, so if you guys are interested in integrating Verite, you can check out the docs right here, or you can scan this QR code and fill out a form. And this will go directly to us, our team, and we would love to kind of help you get on board to standard. There's some developer docs there as well that can actually show you the verification API that's in production right now on the cloud. And I believe that's it. I think we have, if you keep clicking, we just have questions.
Yeah, we can take up.
If you go to the next slide.
This one.
Oh, that's it, yep. Yeah, so we are open for questions now. And Tao will have a seat. Cool. I can't really see because there's like lights blinding in my eyes. So.
I'm Naga, founder of Verite.
Hey.
One question, one thing that comes up usually when you interact with traditional finance is the access to the actual KYC data, which is tax ID number or business incorporation certificate of filing. How do I interact with a traditional finance company who needs to be the actual data?
So.
The decision is fine, but that only works as long as everyone is on the same network. But when I move off network, how do I get that actual data so that I can give it to someone?
That's a good question. The design right now it's completely decoupled, right? That the verification and the issuance that actually contains the PII that you're looking for are completely decoupled, right? Now, I'm guessing, is this in the case of an incident, or are they just asking for audit purposes?
So in an example, you're working with an insurance company. The insurance company needs to go to traditional underwriters.
Okay.
And they need to see the actual KYC records of the particular person or a business. So they need, what you're doing on the Web3 front, this is a conversation from the traditional finance to the company. What you're doing on the Web3 front is fine, we understand the risk and everything, but we need to see the actual business for their books.
Yeah, what I can tell you is we have pointers to the data, right? And the data is inside Circle Issuer.
Okay.
So that's the idea, right? The whole idea of this is to decouple that extra PII and metadata and just kind of leave it to the generic facts and IDs so that relying party here can actually do AML and other kinds of analysis without having the PII, right? So I'm trying to think, this seems like the scenario you're describing seems like an onboarding scenario, like you're trying to work with an insurance company and they just want to know all your customers' data. Is that the scenario? Yeah, that's
a perfect implementation in that case would, in general interaction with traditional finance, would be if you have pointers, as long as the business does not want to resolve the pointers, it's fine.
Okay.
The day that they want to resolve the pointers, they should have access to the actual PII with users' consent.
That's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. Gagan is on our team as well.
That's what I'm doing. So in your example, the North Star that we envision is that the identity that's issued by Verite is what the insurance company should be able to trust, and they shouldn't be asking for anything. If they do end up asking for more information, then it's it creates the whole purpose of having an identifier on chip on the board.
Got it. Thanks.
But what about in an incident? There's a theft with the wallet that you're associated with. How do you figure out, but that was KYC'd, how do you figure out who that was?
So you as the DApp,
Or the authorities.
the authorities, we have, as Circle, we KYB our customers, so we have funnels to act, that can deal with that. So our regular funnel, in case of something that, goes wrong, we have a process to handle KYB exceptions. So they would just go into that funnel.
But if I get a no-fact request for a wallet that's invested in my fund, right now I respond to it because I know who they are. But if I don't know who they are because you verified them, do I just forward that to you? How does that work?
It's completely traceable. So you can go to whoever you go to the verifier, you can request the information from the verifier. The verifier will know who issued the credential, go back to the issuer. So it's completely traceable. If your FBI stop by and say, I needed the credential, they have a way to go back to the real person.
Got it. So you go back to the verifier.
The trace is there. The only thing I want to say is the funnels to get to it would depend on the situation. That's all. The trace is definitely there, the lineage.
And just if I can add one more thing to that, as the platform partner here, what we discussed is in the case of an incident or a request for information from the authorities, the verifier would then reach out to the issuer of the credential, and that is part of the sort of licensing agreement as a platform partner, so that you can evaluate incidents.
Hey, great talk. My question is more, my understanding is the DID, your layer is on top of the DID, so it's for identity verification. But thanks to Tao's demo, I think the application of that is lending. My question is more about, would your Verite layer serve as a integration layer where, you know, when it comes to lending, there's risk involved, there's default involved. Would the lender be able to utilize information from this verified information layer to be able to verify asset of the person that they lended to? Maybe they have asset from elsewhere instead of from just this one place, so that they can decide about the risk. What kind of other type of information will, it's multi-sided, right? Like would you provide that to the lender so that they can use that information to do risk analysis? That's my question.
So to re-ask the question, I think what you're asking is, like, would a lender be able to dedupe identities themselves, for example? Like, or would they be able to work with multiple identities and ensure that there is no like transactional crime happening between the identities, right?
That's one aspect, but that's the bad actor. But
Okay.
there's also good actor where I have multiple accounts, but for each account, because my asset is everywhere, but I can only leverage one type of asset to one vendor, and that lender have no visibility of my credibility elsewhere. Would your layer serve as an integration layer to bring other type of trustworthiness of that user to the lender?
I think that's an interesting extension of the MVP that we have. Right now, what we have is we're giving the tools to the dApp, and you know, Tao can add more color to this as well. But yeah, go ahead, actually, Tao.
Yeah. So the current design is I just show the single credential, right? But inside the credential, in fact, in TrueFi's demo, the inside credential, there's two conditions. One is the KYB, and another one is called a credit investor, because their compliance require they have to go through a credit investor to do implementation. So inside that credential, you have two of them. Of course, you can extend to multiple one. That's from a single issuer. Yes, for the wallet, if you look at the wallet interface, it's actually a list of credential. You can apply from one issuer, one credential, from another issuer, apply another credential, and combine them together. Yes.
Makes sense. Thank you.
So if, for example, a fraud does happen, who will liability give?
Good question. So, you know, we can't really opine on the dApp's regulatory status. We're providing the tools to separate PI, to expose identity, to hide identity and still show generic facts, right? So we're giving you the tools for that. We believe that with these real-time checks and tools, you should have enough of the information to build and reconstruct any scenario that you're concerned with. So I guess the short answer is the liability is on the app that's using it, yeah, like that's kind of by design is what it is.
And then if that event happens, would you alert everyone else in your network that something has happened on one of your partners and this particular,
that this institution then needs to be invalidated across the entirety of Circle's network? So are you then rippling through that incident to everyone else?
Well, think about it this way, right? We have a customer list that we're managing. We're doing KYB, fraud, everything right now on it. So if we do detect that one of them does go bad, we will immediately revoke it. So whichever app is dependent on that identity will get the red signal.
And if I could just add something. Is this working? Yeah. If I could just add something, it's really interesting the way that we've implemented in that the protocol can choose who are the issuers that they trust.
True.
And so maybe a protocol says, I only trust credentials issued from Circle because I know that they've done this really rigorous KYB process, and they do revocation, and they do all of this monitoring, and so I have trust in this credential, but I might not trust a credential issued from Nick's KYC shop spun up 2 days ago. So it does give a little bit more flexibility on the protocol side. And then as it relates to sort of like fraud and bad actors, we recommend as an implementation to check the status of that credential multiple times. Every time someone takes a transaction or an action, you can recheck the credential to make sure that it hasn't gone into a bad state. And so it reduces the scope of sort of the liability and exposure for that fraud.
Absolutely, yeah. And the one thing the standard like suggests and almost like you know, like I won't say order, but like almost like prescribes is that per permission check, do call the verifier because it's so lightweight, so that you are checking at the last mile, right? And our implementation, what we have done is actually really checks all the way to the last mile. It takes the result, goes all the way on the chain, and at chain execution time, checks 3 things, right? The deadline is realistic. If the verifier is somebody, is actually listed in the public list of verifiers, not a man in the middle. And if the owner of the transaction is actually the owner of the VC. So these 3 things are actually checked last mile too. So that's also another thing by design. Yeah.
Just people have. My name is Kurt Kumar. Question is for Praful and Ben.
Sure.
If Edward Snowden wanted to do KYB with Circle, what would happen?
Well, first of all, he would have to have a company, right?
Let's say he has a company. He's a Russian citizen now. So would Circle...
Yeah.
Is Circle neutral in this case? Because Edward Snowden does want to do business with, let's say, a Russian DeFi platform. What would he do?
I'm just looking around to see if there are any compliance officers from our team here, because we are, that's a established process is what I'll say, right? We are extending and letting our users take the credentials and access to the dApps, but to become a Circle customer, that process is established, and I just want to make sure that...
So for the dApps that are trying to rely on Circle for that credential, are we saying, and again, there's no right or wrong answer, so I'm not trying to put you guys in a hot seat here. Is Circle acting as a neutral entity saying, yes, we will provide a KYC or KYB credentials to Snowden, even though he might be on the OFAC list, so that he can do business in Russia or in Belarus or wherever? Because there could be a dApp out there which will probably say, hey, we are okay with North Korean citizens and we are okay with Iranian citizens. You see what I mean? The world is not...
Got it.
I'm not on the compliance team, but I don't think Edward Snowden would be approved for a Circle account.
Understood.
And the beauty of Verite, though, is Circle is just one issuer. Maybe there is another issuer who's a little bit more neutral, who you'd want to work with and get the credential issued from them so that Snowden could access your pool.
And I'll add something else to that, that as the dApp using this, the information that we're receiving from Circle in the verifiable credential that they provide that we then consume as part of our smart contract is, it tells us, is this person, or is this a US entity that has passed KYB? So first off, Edward Snowden Holdings LLC, so he makes a Delaware C Corp, but he is a Russian citizen. That would fail because the beneficial owner of that, say 100% beneficial ownership is a Russian citizen, that would fail KYB. And for us, we ultimately pass on the ability to set customizable compliance onboarding rules to people who want to raise capital on our platform. And so for us, it's important to say, well, I can accept, maybe that person does want to accept money from KYB'd entities, but even then, past KYB, you can't have Russian beneficial ownership, just in general to pass a standard KYB process today for this purpose. So that's, I'd say there's some customizability for who we accept, and that goes to entity registration as well as beneficial ownership.
Hey, this is Gagan. I want to add one more aspect to this. So your question, actually, I'm going to abstract it out, and I think something that probably wasn't obvious in the presentation was that Verite is a neutral standard, Okay, Circle is an opinionated company, and there's a difference between the two. So Verite as a standard is non-opinionated. The way it works is that there are multiple issuers, multiple verifiers, and what you saw today was one instance of Circle being an issuer and Circle being a verifier. So to your specific question, though Edward Snowden might not be eligible for Circle, it is possible that another company implementing an issuer and verifier or using Verite will allow Snowden to do business in Russia or anywhere else in the world. So that's a really important aspect to take away, is that the demo was from Circle, but the point is that the protocol is neutral. And so you as a company can come in, build your own issuer, and check for whatever policies you want to, issue an identifier, and any other dApp who is okay with you as an issuer and you as a verifier will trust that credential that you issue and be able to do the business with that wallet.
Hey, Brennan from ID Partner. Could you guys talk a little bit about trust framework and the issuers? Like, what information is available for a dApp to decide, okay, well, I trust this issuer but not that issuer because I know that they've done certain checks that are important to me, and issuers might be like-minded, but what is the transparency of the KYB checks that have been done by the issuer?
Good question. So as I mentioned, that center is the standard maintainer. So they're the ones that are maintaining this neutral standard. We are MVPing this, like Gagan mentioned, with our issuer. And we have certain standards that we follow. So what center is doing, and I see Dave in the room right here, is actually working with us on this governance standard so that we can identify what the minimum requirements are for some issuer to be called a KYB issuer or somebody to be called a KYC issuer, for example. So yeah, if we would love to partner with more issuers, because this is one data point to everybody's point here. Like, we're just one issuer. If there are other issuers, we would love to kind of understand what it takes to get, what is the right level of standards. For KYB, we feel pretty strong with ours, right? We showed you ours. And then we can codify it to in 60 rules that we're working with. Well, what is the standard for other use cases? For example, your retail segment might have. Maybe it's less stringent. So maybe we can codify that, and that's a new class of issuers that we can name, and then you can trust that set of issuers. Like, hey, this is the KYC issuers from Verite, and this is their list. And you can select which one you want to work with. Maybe they can, there's a marketing website that takes you to each of their landing pages and explains why their attestations are more unique.
And I'll add one point also, is since we have our own KYB process as well, and that is audited by our banking partners. And so in this case, we wanted to make sure that any process that we were going to accept in lieu of our own is robust, meets our own checks, and we had a chance to effectively audit the Circle KYB program as part of this to make sure that it aligned with our standards for beneficial ownership and the documents that are collected and the future checks after verification and so all of those things. And so at least for now, as a launch partner and then as the only issuer, this made a lot of sense for us. And I think as a partner, we will continue to evaluate as new issuers come online to say, do they meet our rigorous standards for KYB?
So as regulations change, like SSN needs to be collected if you have transactions over $600, who is responsible for collecting that as the KYC and KYB requirements change? Would I just trust Circle collects it? Would I be notified if they don't collect it and it passes the date that the check comes into account? How does that work?
Yeah, this is Gagan. Again, I'll take this question. So what we envision is that there is, again, like I think the question is more around the policy engine. So the policies that get specified. So there are engines out there like CLANS who allow you to specify policies. So the example you took was like $600 limitation and let's say a credit score and US driver's license that is, or US identity that is valid. If those policies are changing, the credential should get invalidated and new credential will need to be issued when the policy expires or policy changes. Does that answer the question? I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Will you guys add accredited investor to your issuer verifier?
We have that information already.
Oh, so that's part of the,
Yep.
so I can tell out of that credential whether you're accredited or not.
There are actually two specific credentials, one of which is that in our case are bundled. So it's kind of one wrapper. Within that, there is a KYB US credential and an accredited credential, and we ultimately consume both of those and check it against our smart contract to evaluate an investor's suitability.
And then qualified purchaser, which is the next one.
We were just talking about that.
Also in there?
A little earlier.
Or you're going to add it?
There are use
hope
cases.
so.
Yeah, so how about this? We're in early access right now. If you scan the QR code, we would love to talk more and see what other use cases are out there.
That was a plant because Tom is on my team.
Oh, I just realized this. Oh my God, got played. More questions? Yeah. So yeah, I just wanted to say, like, this, there's a lot of ecosystem partners here, and it takes a lot to to get an end-to-end flow going. So this is why we're so excited to show this, and hopefully this inspires you guys to come on to the ecosystem and add your own unique attestations, verifications, issuance.
Yeah, question. Have you thought about? Have you thought about KY B2B model for credential issuance? Like instead of an issuer issuing a credential, how about an issuer issuing an on behalf of credential for some other B? So like an hierarchical
that makes sense.
Credential issuance model.
So for example, a company, let's take an example like Dapper Labs, they want to do KYC for their customers, and you're saying they would use Verite or something under the scenes, and I guess, is that your question? Is like, are we going to empower KYC for our customers, I guess?
Yeah, so currently the hierarchy seems to be Verite on the top. You have a B under which there is a C, right? Let's say the accreditor investors.
Okay.
So how about a model where there is a Verite, then there is a B, then there is a B underneath that, which is issuing the credentials for a lot of
other businesses, yeah. Other individuals. That's a very interesting idea. Would love to learn more about the specific use case. But if
I think let's chat. Let's understand sort of the use cases, and if it's something that the credential can support, I don't see why it wouldn't be able to be. It's open.
Yeah, we just
can be extended. So let's chat.
The other one is on the verification API. Probably I missed it, but what's the main advantage of verification API? Is it that as a verifier I don't deal with the cryptography, or what's the value for?
Sorry, is your question from the dApp's perspective or from the verifier's perspective?
From the verifier, from both. Let's put it.
Okay, so from the dApp's perspective, hopefully it's clear. There's no management of any scaling up, scaling down of the verification infrastructure, right? Like the API is on the cloud, we're managing that for you.
Okay, I just get a yes or no kind of answer. As a dApp, is that how it is, or?
Yes, it's kind of like a 200 if everything is okay, and 400 if something is not, and it'll give you a reason why.
Okay.
Yeah. So that API is live right now.
Okay.
So that's how it works.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Hi. So when you are issuing the credential that is requested from the wallet, is it like a soul-bound token that would be made available from that wallet, or I have to again reinitiate the verification credentials if I want to use a different wallet?
The latter.
The latter.
Yeah. So this is more akin to a cryptographic proof that's stored in your wallet off-chain, and then if you lose your wallet, you basically have to come in and re-request the credential. And also, we have an expiry, so we require you to come back to our website every 30 days anyway to request the credential. So the expiry on the VC token itself.
Okay, and if I'm if I have to kind of re-request from a different wallet, right? Are you deduping it, or how do you tie back that this is the same person trying to?
Right now, it's tied to the wallet address, but that is good feedback. That I think, I think that's good feedback. That's the first time I've heard of it, at least.
Yeah, because otherwise you'll be ending up with multiple kind of credential for the same physical person, right?
That's okay. We currently support that one. And also the insurance flow is very cheap because it's chain independent. Basically just a functional call, service call. Then you get the credential within like 1 second. So you can apply multiple times. If you have multiple wallets, apply multiple times. Even the same wallet, you can apply multiple times. That's okay.
Yeah, and I'm also trying to understand the use case here. Like it just doesn't make sense why, for the same issuer, why I would have two different wallets. So I'm just trying to understand that. Maybe there is. We can chat after this.
I'd actually jump in there. Like we, as an investment in DApp, do see people who have value on multiple wallets, and so it would totally make sense that someone might want to leverage the same identity to have a credential multiple wallets to deploy assets. One might have an ENS or something, or some other identifier, vanity something that they want to show, and others may not. And so I could see for us, we're not like dealing in NFTs or anything else, but sometimes I think there's like conspicuous consumption and conspicuous ownership, and other times there's less conspicuous ownership. So in those cases, I could see a reason why, and certainly we've had people who come to us, and prior to using Verite, we have our own in-house on-chain permissioning system, and this is helping us to scale that in a more efficient way. And so we've certainly had people request and say, hey, actually I want to leverage the permissioning aspect for this other wallet. Can you help us put that into this on-chain management system?
And the only other thing is like, the problem that multi-custodian and multi-orchestration wallets are solving right now, I feel like would handle that. And like at least the conversations we're having with some wallet partners. So like I feel like that is a problem that custodian management and assignment to the address would solve. And we could attach the VC to the address level of the multi-custodian wallet. But go ahead.
I also want to add one point, because this is, it's not harmful to have multiple VC.
Yeah, that's
just
true.
like for example, you have driver license. You have a multiple driver license. It's okay, because driver license is just allow you to drive. As long as you can show the driver license belongs to you, you are the driver. Then if you have multiple one, it's okay.
Yeah, the thing I'm trying to get at is like if you look at the down the roadmap, right? Like the vision. In the future, if you want to kind of profile the customer for third-party kind of utilities, right? Like I don't know, loans, mortgages, whatever, right? So how do you, if you have multiple credentials, how you profile the customer if they have multiple credentials?
I think the point is we design this one trying to hide the user's real information, because the user have a reason to keep anonymous. If they choose to use a two wallet, they probably have the reason don't want to disclose that information. So our design actually support that one. So just in the extreme case, if like government want know the real person, we will provide it. Otherwise, we will support the user to keep them separate.
Thank you.
Hello. So who actually audits the issuer? I'm trying to understand, because circle of trust. As you mentioned, different issuers will have different attestation, KYC, KYB, America, non-America, whatever. Who's actually auditing and making sure that these providers are actually doing what they have said? And you mentioned there's like a marketing website, right? So who's maintaining that?
Right. That's a good question for Dave, actually. He's from Center.
Yeah, there's been a lot of questions that are related generally to the governance of Verite. How do we establish trust in issuers? Who sets the rules for what an issuer needs to do offline to issue a valid KYB credential? What we're doing at Center in cooperation with Circle and several other ecosystem partners is we're putting together a governance framework that will produce a rule book which legally binds issuers, verifiers, wallets, relying parties to a certain set of rules and standards that they must adhere to. And if they are a party or a signatory to that rule book, we will list them as a trusted identity for the ecosystem. There's no obligation for anyone to actually rely on our list, but what we can say is that the representations and warranties that these issuers and verifiers have signed up to meet these certain standards. As an example, they follow FATF's best practices for virtual asset service providers. They have a risk-based AML KYC program. They have a chief compliance officer who's duly authorized and liable to actually enforce that program. It will also provide rights of the Verite governance board to actually audit those issuers on an ongoing basis to make sure that they're continuing to uphold the obligations that they've attested to be upholding. So the entire governance framework that we're working with several large key stakeholders in the ecosystem, including Circle, will sort of create that minimum viable trust framework so that the ecosystem knows at a minimum that these issuer and verifiers who have signed up to this rule book are adhering to these rules and standards, and that makes it much easier for people getting onboarded to actually have trust in the credentials that are being issued. Hope that makes sense.
And is Center like a non-profit organization?
Center is a joint venture between Coinbase and Circle. We're actually the consortium that launched USDC and oversees Verite. So we are not a nonprofit at this time for Verite, but we're exploring with industry multiple legal entity structures, really to ensure what I think is behind your question, which is that there's no commercial bias actually behind the governance of Verite, and that it's truly a neutral body providing an industry utility. So those discussions are well underway with Circle and others involved in the ecosystem. I would be surprised to not see some form of nonprofit, or at least legally provable neutrality in the continued operation and maintenance of this governance framework.
So my question is more around security. So let's say if someone manages to steal one of the tokens that's in my MetaMask wallet, and let's say an adversary or whoever is basically misusing that to say lend something or use that identity for any nefarious purposes. One is, will I be, as like a person whose original identity was stolen, will I be able to see like, hey, someone stole my identity, and B, what would I be able to do with that?
So I can answer the question. So first one is credential doesn't contain any PII information, so you can even publish online, it's okay, no personal information. Second one is, if I grab other people's credential trying to use myself, because the credential is tied with the wallet, if you protect your private key securely, nobody can use your credential.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like pushing that. Like, let's say if I'm not responsible enough to handle my own private key, right? Let's say I do lose that private key, and kind of getting into that use case, you know, where if I do lose, do I also lose my identity in that case?
You would yes, you will lose your identity. The worst case is you
reissue the credential.
Reach to issuer, we will revoke the credential immediately.
You would just contact the issuer of the credential and say my credential has been, or my wallet has been compromised.
Yeah.
And then the issuer could revoke the status of the credential, and therefore your identity couldn't be used.
Gotcha. Yeah, that answers one question. The second is, if it's already misused, can I, like, I'm guessing I kind of know the answer to this, so I probably need to reach out to dApp provider, I guess. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Hey folks, we have time for one more question.
Over here, I have a question. My question is on the revenue models for the issuers and the verifiers. Like, how do we get paid if we're one of those?
That's a good question, and I believe that there are several models. I can offer two examples. one for the verifier and one for the issuer. So for the issuer, hopefully it's clear there are businesses out there that charge per issuance certain amount of dollars, and then certain amount of dollars to make to like refresh those credentials over a period of time. So for issuance, hopefully it's clear that you can still continue to do that, right? People will come to you, you issue credentials, they save those credentials in their wallet, but they, go ahead and do something else.
But does the business pay for it or the individual? Like
it's flexible. The model
the
is.
The DApp or the business?
So,
it's flexible.
The model is flexible so that the DApp can allow to pay for the customer, but yeah, like in this model that I'm imagining, I'm just throwing out a company out there that does similar stuff like parallel markets and others. Like, you can go to their website and pay some money and get an ID from them. So the business model there is clear. For verifiers, the way, again, there's a distribution channel to be built out. Right now we have an API that's in the cloud. Makes sense for all issuers to just offer that, right? Like, does Twitter charge for their APIs for the users? No, they rate limit them, right? So I think we continue doing that for the API model. For other things like on-chain access, I think there's the Oracle model. There's where there is like Oracle's like API 3, like Chainlink, that can kind of bridge the gap and make that call from the chain. And then there's just pure on-chain publishers that like could batch publish, stream publish data onto the chain for a cost, and and basically it's basically free to read for the DApp then. So I look at those as different models.
Thank you.
If I'm an owner of company A and company B, I have access to the same wallet. How do you ensure that I don't use credential from company A for company B?
We have terms of service that govern how you can use the credential. You would be able to do it if you violated the terms of service, but that would also give us revocation rights against the credential itself. So it's more of a legal thing than a technical limitation.
All right, well, thank you so much.